chapter 5.
All right. So you
Verses 1 through 5. And then verses 18 and 19.
Yes, sir.
Mark chapter 5. Beginning with verse 1, and they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadareans. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwellings among the tombs. No man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with the stones. Verse 18, and when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but said unto him, Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord has done for thee, and had compassion on thee. Thank you. I want to talk about man, thou art loosed. Man, thou art loosed. Say that with me, man, thou art loose. Bless you. The Gospel of Mark in chapter 5 share with us 3 situations that are extremely difficult. There is the demon-possessed man, the diseased woman, and the dead girl. In our day, with this demon-possessed man, we would place him in a mental hospital. The diseased woman, we would put her in a convalescent home. And the dead girl, we would bury her. But it just so happened that all 3 of these people met Jesus. To the demon-possessed man, Jesus served as a psychiatrist. To the diseased woman, he was a gynecologist. And to the dead girl, he was a pediatrician. I like that about Jesus because he can be so much to so many and never lose the common touch. Jesus and his disciples had been in a storm. And of course, all of us are somewhat familiar with storms. There are a number of storms. There's a storm that comes to correct us, but there's a storm that comes to perfect us. And there are always three ways of looking at storms. Either look back and discover you've been in a storm, or look in and discover you're in a storm, or look ahead and expect to run into a storm. If you've not been in one yet, keep living. There's a storm on your agenda. But storms have a way of developing us. As long as the sun is shining, we really don't know who we are. We really don't know how to handle crisis if you've never been in one. And many times you never hear people testifying because we don't have a testimony. And the reason we don't have a testimony and testify, we've never had to go through a test. But if you've gone through a test, you'll come out having a testimony. And if you have a testimony, you will really want to testify and tell somebody, I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Jesus and his disciples had been in a storm on the Lake of Galilee. This Lake of Galilee is about 13 miles long at its longest, 8 miles wide at its widest. They had sailed all night or most of the night, and in the deep darkness of the night, they made it to the other side. I need to tell you that I'm on my way to the other side. Now, I need to tell you that going to the other side may be difficult to get there, but if you stay on the ship, you'll make it to the other side. Don't abandon the ship, stay on the ship. Paul and his followers were on their way to Rome once, and they ran into a storm, and the ship wrecked, and it had 276 passengers, but somehow God broke the ship up into 276 pieces, which meant every passenger had a piece. I like that because God, if you belong to him, he will give you a piece. You may not have the whole ship, but hold on to the pieces. But God has a way of picking up the pieces and putting the pieces together. Matter of fact, that's what I was when he met me. I was nothing but a messed up piece. In the arena of auto mechanics, my frame was bent out of shape. My engine had thrown a rod. My transmission was slipping. My universal joint had jumped out of place. My tires were on flat and my brakes wasn't holding. My battery was down. My radiator was boiling over and my lights was all out. But when I met it, are you all in the house? He picked up the pieces and made me what I am now. He majored in picking up the pieces. Jesus and his disciples made it to the other side, and when he got there met him a man out of a tomb that had his dwellings among the tombs. The man was in the graveyard. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the three synoptic writers, all discuss this demonic person. Luke talks about him in Luke chapter 8. Matthew talks about him in Matthew chapter 8. Mark pick him up in Mark chapter 5. All three men say something different about him. Luke, I like Luke. Luke said that he stayed in the graveyard streaking. In other words, he couldn't keep any clothes on. Matthew said that he somewhat foamed at the mouth. Mark said he was cutting himself with the stones in the graveyard. Looking at the three synoptic gospels, you could call him a wild man. And I need to tell you, all wild men are not dead yet. There's some wild men in your neighborhood. And wild men make life uncomfortable. It is difficult to live in the midst of wild men. I'm sure that in this place where this man lived, that during the time by him staying in the graveyard, that they had funerals and burial times. But whenever the funeral or the family would come to bury the dead, they wouldn't hang around and discuss what had happened in years past like we do today. They would rush back into their chariot and leave the site because of the wild man. I'm sure that there were people that enjoyed fishing and hunting in the area, but the place went without any hunters, without any fishers. They wouldn't come to fish in that area nor to hunt. They were afraid of the wild man. Women would have problems with their husbands staying out at night with the boys. And they would say to their husbands, "Don't stay out tonight, I'm afraid." And they would ask why. And the response would be, because of the wild man. I'm sure that children were afraid to walk the streets during the day because the wild man was loose. Are you all in here? Every newscaster that would come on and bring forth the news every morning, evening, and night, the number one topic was the wild man. Every time they'd pick up the morning paper, on the front page was a picture of the wild man. Every person that dreamed at night and had nightmares, it was always about the wild man. The wild man disturbed the city. The wild man disturbed the neighborhood. It was difficult to have church. Preachers would hear the same story Sunday after Sunday. "Pastor, I would have came today. I would have been here. But I was afraid to come by the graveyard because of this wild man." Now, hear me when I tell you that this man sounds so much like men today. Listen, number one, he isolated himself from normal folk. He didn't want to hang around the family. He didn't want to go to church. He didn't want to spend time in the neighborhood. He found an isolated place where he could go and feel comfortable. That's almost the way people act when they're on drugs, when they're alcoholics. If you notice, they try to isolate themselves from other folk. You got a son, a daughter on drugs, you can't hardly find them. They hang out in some of the worst spots you could ever think of. And you ask them sometime, "Why do you do that? Why do you hang out in areas like this?" And their response is, "I don't want to be preached to. I get tired of hearing you telling me how wrong I am, how I need to live, how I need to act, how I need to conduct myself, how I need to conduct my life." So they hide out in places where they can be isolated and by themselves. This man was in an unusual place. He was in the graveyard. Now, say what you will or may, you got to be a little off your rocket to go and move to the graveyard while you're still alive. I mean, I don't care how you love your mama. When she died, you don't let mama stay in the bed. You get mama out. You can say, "Mama, I can't live without you." But you call the undertaker. You call the funeral home. Say, "Come get mama and take her where she's supposed to be." That's to the graveyard. Am I in this house by myself? Yeah, because dead folks supposed to be in the graveyard. And before I go too far, I need to tell us that I'm looking in the face at some people now that you have already moved to the graveyard. I know you said that. I don't like that statement, preacher. I'm here in church this morning, but your body is here, but your mind is in the graveyard. Yeah, you got up this morning and dressed and put on closed, but you're not here. This is like a gigantic parking lot. We park our bodies and our minds go browsing in other areas. We have moved to the graveyard. You say, explain what you're saying. Here's what I'm saying. You're here, but your hope is dead. Your dreams, they're dead. You don't have anything else to look forward to. You just waiting on the day for you to leave here and check out and move to another place. You don't have any new ideas. You don't have any new adventures before you. You're just sitting around waiting to die. Somebody meet you, ask what you're doing. I got up, I went to work, I came home, I went to bed, I got up, I ate, I went to work, I came home, I went to bed, I got up, I ate, I went to work, I came home, I got up, I went to work, our hope is gone, our dreams have all died out, and when you get to that place in life, you're ready for the graveyard. You see, you can live weeks without food, days without water, but only minutes without hope. And when your hope is gone, that's the end of you. And that's why, I don't know how you feel about it, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking, saying, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus Christ and his righteousness. I tell you, you need to keep hope alive. Keep it moving. Stay alive. Have new ventures, new ideas. Do something new. Don't mind taking a step and a stand in the right direction for the cause of Christ. This man was in the graveyard. He was there, and the Bible said that he was his own enemy. Because listen at what the Bible said. It said night and day. He was in the mountains and in the tombs. He was crying. He was cutting himself. Watch this. In the tomb down here, in the mountain over there. And every once in a while they would put chains on him, but he would break the chains. Chains couldn't hold him. I'm afraid that's one of the ways that we're trying to corral Memphis and our nation by building bigger chains. We're building bigger jails. They're overcrowded. And it takes $30,000 to $40,000 a year to house or to chain a criminal. Preach, Reverend Ray. And we're constantly building bigger jails, but you can take a $3 Bible and change a person. Because when you get them in chains, it don't change them. Chains just hold a person temporarily. Are you all in the house? But God wants us to change them. And hear me when I tell you, if the word can't do it, it can't be done. And if God changed me, then he can change anybody. Matter of fact, if he changed you, he can change anybody. I know we may be a little holy in here now, but God, remember when we were hellish. We may be doing all right now, singing, I love the Lord, he heard my cry now, but we used to sing, I'm trying to find me a part-time love. Huh? Somebody in here remember those days, but God changed us. This man was his own enemy, cutting himself with stones and chains, crying night and day. I tell you, his problem, he was demon possessed. And as quiet as we play it, demons are real. We put it on other stuff, it's really demons. The demonic world is as real today as it was on yesterday. This 1-900 psychic number, nothing but demons. Preach, Reverend Ray. I don't want to know what my future is if God can't tell me. Just knowing what tomorrow is going to bring ain't going to help me if I don't have somebody to help me control tomorrow. Do I have a witness? This man was possessed with an unclean spirit, and the Bible said he met Jesus. Your future has a lot to do with who you meet. You can meet the right person and can prosper. You can meet the wrong person and can go down. You've heard me many times tell this. These two men were in the mental hospital crying. Every time they saw each other, they were walking down the hall, bumping each other, crying, "Oh Mary, oh Mary, oh Mary." And they did it for years, and finally they decided to stop and talk to each other. They were both in mental hospitals. One man said to the other man, "I noticed you for the last several years, you've been crying, 'Oh Mary,' and I've been crying, 'Oh Mary.' Why is it that you're crying, 'Oh Mary'?" He said, "Well, I wanted to marry Mary, and Mary turned me down. She wouldn't marry me, so I lost my mind." And he said, "Well, by the way, you've been crying, 'Oh Mary,' why is it that you're crying, 'Oh Mary'?" He said, "The reason I'm crying, 'Oh Mary,' is I married Mary." Are you all in this house? So you have to watch who you meet. Sometimes if you meet the wrong person, y'all looking at me strange, you met the wrong person and it set you back 10 years. You're still trying to climb up out of the barrel because you met the wrong person. And here is a person that met the right person, and they selling, they didn't have much going for them. They just met the right person. This man met Jesus. It was thus meeting divinity. It was human meeting divine, finite meeting infinite. And when he met Jesus, he came, fell down before him, and said, "That you come to torment me." Well, it's amazing how the devil can recognize Jesus better than we can. The devil knew who he was. The devil came and said, "I know you got power to do whatever you want to do with me whenever you get ready." And here we are, saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost, and walk around with our heads down wondering, how am I going to make it? How am I going to survive? My rent is due and my house note is due, my utilities due. And here you are, he's been providing for you for 50 years. And you run into one little crunch and get ready to commit suicide. All you got to do is look back and say, the same God that brought me to where I am, he'll lead me on. And if that's not enough, you ought to get Psalms 37:25. I've been young, and now I'm old, but I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their seed begging for bread. If that's not enough, Psalms 121 verse 1, I lift up mine eyes unto the hills, which cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord. Or Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. To have a witness. He met the man. Jesus saw him and said, what is your name? This might be the first star of this psychology movement. Watch Jesus, great psychiatrist. He says to the man, what is your name? You see, Jesus knew that sometime in the distant past, this man that was destroying himself was a nice guy. You see people in the street now, they haven't always been that way. You see men laying on the street with rags. Sometimes they have a PhD degree. Sometimes they serve as your boss, but they made the wrong turn. Or they ran into the wrong person and lost everything they had. And you can get into such a bad shape until sometimes you forget who you are. You start losing hope, and you start listening to other folk talk you down, and you start believing it yourself. That's why you should never tell your child you ain't nothing. You should never tell them you won't make it. I had a person to look at me in my senior year in school and point his finger in my face, and he was one of my teachers, said, boy, you'll never be anything. Anybody go help me here? And I wanted to find him to tell him, look at me now, because you're not going to prophesy on me. Tell me what I can't be when I know a man. That even though I'm not able, I feel like preaching it here, even though I'm not able myself, when I rub shoulders with him, when I lean on the real man, anybody know he got power? Jesus said, what is your name? I really, honest to goodness, think that this young man in this graveyard grew up in a religious home. I really believe he spent time in Sunday school. I really think he used to get up Sunday morning and say his little speech. Grew up, nice young fella, went off to college, got with the wrong group, started missing church on Sunday, decided to hang out with the gang. Somebody pulled up a marijuana stick and said, you ain't got to be square. Come on and be hip with me. He took one little hit of it. Before long, he was on cocaine. And there, he was on heroin. Before long, he was out of school. Lost his job. Lost his identity. Ended up in the ditch. And so Jesus was just trying to bring him back to who he was. He said to him, man, what is your name? And do you remember who you used to be? I'm talking to somebody in here today that you used to have it upright with the Lord. You used to read your Bible every Sunday morning, every day of the week. You wouldn't leave home without talking to the Lord. Have I got a witness here? You used to have respect for folk and folk used to have respect for you. They would meet you somewhere and they would applaud you for living a good life. But you got caught up with the wrong crowd. You started fiddling around with the devil. Have I got it hip in here? And when you decide to play with the devil, he'll get you every time. He got enough tricks in his bag to pull you down whenever he get ready. And you see, the devil always show you the glamour. A few years ago, I went out to Los Angeles, California, to those areas where they make movies. They tried to get me involved in a movie. And I went out there to see how they did it. All those beautiful homes that you see on television, and when you walk through the door, that's it. You walk through the front door, and you're in the backyard. Anybody gonna help me here? In other words, what I'm trying to say, it ain't nothing but a front.